social media, and that is politics. Today, it's more around, is the money that is being invested into political campaigns impactful? And does it impact the elections? Gina Reinhart, by our votes, is the question. I certainly felt very far away from the rest of the world, but very connected through social media, ironically.
Acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we're joining this conversation. We pay our respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today.
Welcome to the Water Talks. I'm Christine, and I'm here to talk to you today on my own in freezing Melbourne on Bunurong country. And I'm going to have a conversation with you today about stuff that I think impacts all of us, actually, and stuff that we are dealing with on a daily basis if any of us are on any type of social media, and that is politics. And not necessarily politics for the sake of having a conversation and grievance politics and for me to say, and I believe this and I believe that and, you should believe this. This is not that kind of conversation. It's a conversation of trying to make sense of what's happening globally, where the money is really impacting what we're doing. So last week, I think there was a conversation I had with Cindy Coe, which was talking about impact investment, how money can make impact. Today, it's more around, is the money that is being invested into political campaigns impactful? And does it impact the elections and the results? And are we using our own agency and our ability to research and understand what's happening in the world? Or are we being led? Like, are we being harvested effectively through social media algorithms and whatever it is that we might click on that we think is really funny, or some sort of GIF, or it's a weird space to be in, because I think that certainly when I was younger, politics it was discussed, but it wasn't discussed like it is now, like every day, all the time. And we didn't have the kind of populism typed politics that we're witnessing today. And I think it's challenging. It's so challenging. So I was talking to somebody earlier and I asked the question, do you think that money that is actually invested into particular political campaigns influences the outcome with the voter? So with us, are we influenced? So when we see that, it's clear that Gina Reinhart has put money into Pollination and One Nation, and Barnaby Joyce has joined One Nation maybe because they're the only party that would have him, but I think more importantly, because there was a theory that they'd actually be able to bring the Nashos across because of the break in the coalition. So I think that there was, it's a political choice to do that. Whether it works or not is another question. But can Gina Reinhart buy our votes is the question. And the answer that I received from the person I was talking about it with earlier was no. No, because it's not about policy. Because if she goes into government at a senior level, at a particularly senior level, in other words, ousting one of the major parties, which is pretty unlikely, and we can talk about the money regarding all that in a minute, but if she actually joins at a senior level, is she actually going to be capable of running the country? And the answer is absolutely fucking not. No way. No way in the world. So at the moment, what she's got is this grievance politics, which is around, it's like, who are we going to find to blame about the world that we're living in right now? And we are only a part of the world, by the way. Like I'm not suggesting that Australia shouldn't think nationally. And we absolutely should think nationally because we're a very long way from everybody else in the world. And we need to think nationally. We need to think about ourselves and how we behave and what we do and what that looks like. The challenge that we've got is we elect these people to represent us. So, in this last week, I mean, if we look, and I don't even look at all the news anymore, like I think I'm a bit exhausted by the news. So I think I've gone through a phase of a bit of nihilism where I'm just like, oh my God, if I have to listen to anything more about this stuff, I'll go mad. But I do want to look at it, and I look at it, and I encourage my kids to look at it, and I encourage anybody to look at it because I think we've got agency in all of this. So, so the question was, does money influence the outcome of an election? And I think to some extent it does, but I think it's more about the campaign, and I think it is much more about the grievance. And I think that I think that a lot, actually, I'm saying I think that a lot. The world shifted. If my cohort were here, if anybody else from the Water Talks was here, they'd be going, oh my God, here she goes about COVID again. COVID changed our world. We had never experienced anything like this in our lives. We started with an epidemic, and we moved to a pandemic, which was a word that we'd never used before in our lives, ever. It's not a word. Oh, well, clearly there are people who research this sort of stuff who do, but we did not. And the world had this issue. The world all of a sudden felt very small. And I certainly felt very far away from the rest of the world, but very connected through social media, ironically. So all of a sudden we're in this position where we had to live within small bounds. We were looking to our governments to tell us what to do. We were looking to our governments to tell us what to do and health organisations to tell us what to do because we needed to, because we didn't understand what was going on. And I think that at that moment was this moment in time that started this kind of snowball effect where trust in government started to decline. So, we didn't believe what was being said, and understandably. I mean, we had a leader in another country telling us that we should drink some bleach and maybe we should have ultraviolet lights shine up. So there was a lot of stuff going on. And certainly in Victoria, we were locked down. I think we had one of the longest lockdowns in the world. We were locked down, but we were very keen to blame, right? So the beginning of this grievance, look what they did. They made us wear masks. They told us that we couldn't go outside. They said we're not allowed to move further than 5 kilometre radius around our home. They. At the same time as having cleaner air because we weren't driving around in cars. People were outside. People were feeling this desire to be closer to their family and friends because they were told they couldn't have it. It's amazing what happens with human behaviour when you're told you can't have something. So you can't have it, you want it. You want it bad. So we had this really interesting sort of time which started this whole democratic change, and autocracy globally was changing. So we were moving from democracies to autocracy. And I remember having someone who was working for me saying, Christine, you do understand that there are more autocracies in the world at this time. And that was 2020, 21? Yeah, 20. So he was saying, or as my mother would say, 20, Christine, it's not 20, it's 20. Anyway, 2020, he was saying, this is the swing, this is where we're moving. And I was like, no way. I mean, we've evolved into democracy, surely to God. But yes, we have. And we're a really young country. So Australia is a 200-something-year-old country, and America's just celebrated its 250th. So we're young countries by all stretches of the imagination, apart from having one of the oldest living nations in the world with our First Nations people, who we very rarely listen to, but that's also another subject, all of which is part of the melting pot of the warm data and reality of the world. Anyway, back to the subject. Does money influence? So, well, yes, it influences, because what we've learned or what we can observe is that the money goes into the population or the popularist ways of being. Well, it's not even a word, I don't think. Populist, the populist way of being. So the hook for a political party is really the important thing, is what is the one hook? And at the moment, One Nation's is immigration. So for those people who feel grievance, who feel upset, who can't afford their food, who are struggling with their bills, who are struggling to pay their mortgages, who are struggling to keep their kids educated, who are struggling on a daily basis with all sorts of things, filling up their car, they want something to be angry. They're angry and they want to blame. For whatever reason, we've decided that blaming works. Apparently, by putting it out there and over there, we don't have to be accountable for our own choices or behaviours or any research or whether we actually share the values of someone or a party like One Nation, because I would suggest that probably there's a ton of people who don't. And I think that the polling just keeps going up and down like a yo-yo. So does money change things? It changes things for the parties. We know that there's been legislation that's taken place in this last couple of years which has effectively disallowed reasonable and fair competition between the independents and the two parties at the moment. And we've got, which is ironic, isn't it, that you've got a Labor government and a Liberal government who come together to make sure that you can't keep any independent, like independents can't spend the same sort of money. So it's not a level playing field by any stretch of the imagination. And we've allowed it. And by that, I mean, we voted these people in. So we've allowed it. Our unwillingness to accept that sometimes things shift, right? So we're in this massively changing world at the moment. We're not dissimilar, I don't think, to Canada. I don't think I'm the only person. It's not the most original idea to say that. Excuse me. So what do we do about it? Like, how can we influence it? Can we influence it? Maybe not. I think the only thing that we can do is to keep ourselves educated. And we've lessened the amount of information that we can actually absorb because of the amount of information we absorb. So some of that means that we need to actually do, a bit of long reading, looking at Substack. I mean, I certainly know that I'm influenced by what I watch, as are all people. So I'm influenced by, I listen to The Bulwark, which is an American organisation, because I think that we're quite influenced now by American politics, significantly influenced. I also watch The Rest is Politics, so I watch both the US and the UK, because I like their different ways of talking to me about, and I feel like they're talking to me about what's going on with their conservative movements. I am influenced personally by what's going on with Spain and the socialist movements that are taking place there, and the fact that they're actually standing up and being willing to say no. Same with Norway, same with Finland. There's a bit of an excitement for me around that sort of agency. I think it's exciting. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a sip because I've got a croak in my throat. So, so for me, it's like, what's the number one topic? What can be the topic of the day that's actually going to get somebody riled up and pissed off, and be able to get onto social media and rant and rave, but it's not really where we want to be, because surely we should be having some consideration around policy and how long term that's going to affect us, and look at the stewardship of our generation. for ourselves and for others and for the younger people who are coming through, because it's not up to them to fix it. So, gosh, sorry. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting time. And I guess what I try to do is, I'm having conversations all the time with people who I don't necessarily agree with, I might add. I went walking with a friend today and we're both pretty clear on what our beliefs are. Uh, um, but I thought it was really interesting when she sort of spoke. We were actually talking about Anthony Albanese and the comment that was made last week when he chose to be on a podcast that was lighthearted and was talking about, I think it was a game, actually. I think it was a game that he played. And the thing that for me was interesting is, why was he on that game show podcast in the first place? I wonder if what's happening actually is that politicians feel so far removed from us that they feel that they need to come towards us to meet us in the space where we hang out. And we hang on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, on, YouTube. I think YouTube's one of the largest. So in come these politicians who once upon a time probably had there was a status, and that status was a way of behaving, which I think is around leadership. So, I'm a big fan of Albo, but I was disappointed that he was saying what he was saying last week. I was like, oh, how do I defend you when you do stuff like that? But this friend of mine, female, said to me today, well, how come we hold Anthony Albanese, who's clearly making a joke, to a higher standard than we do Pauline Hanson, who says really shitty stuff all the time, or again, Barnaby Joyce, I mean, we know about Barnaby Joyce. Barnaby Joyce has really he's lived his personal life publicly. We've all been invited into his life because that's the reality of public office. So does money influence? Well, money pays. So we know that money pays for politicians to do what they want to do. Money pays for advertising. Money pays for the messaging. Clearly, money and the messaging, if we look at what happened with the yes/no vote, was effective. By the coalition won that. So money is, I think, only a part of it. But I still don't think it's the thing that actually changes the vote at the end of the day. I think that the vote, and I think that people actually potentially change their vote on the day. Like, I was volunteering during that referendum, and I was volunteering in an area that is a very upper middle class. Can you say that? Upper middle class? I don't know if you're allowed to say that anymore. Anyway, the upper middle class area. Well, I was in Bayside, and I was campaigning for the yes vote, and the person who was opposite me was campaigning for the no vote. Both of us were parents from a, pretty well-to-do private school in Bayside, and we were sort of having a chat with each other and a little bit surprised to have seen one another. And then, of course, all these people were coming past to vote on that day, and I knew a lot of those faces because they were parents of kids that went to this school that my daughter went to. And, it was a fascinating watch to observe, and the difficulty that people had in going past me, who was, jumping around with a yes, and other people on the other side jumping around as a no. Now, I was convinced before the end of the day and before the count that we would lose. I mean, we did lose, but that we would lose in that area, which was at the time, Zoe Daniels was our candidate in that electorate, and we actually had the highest vote towards yes. So that was interesting too, observationally. So I don't know that there's a hard and fast rule. I think that, as I said, I think people will change their mind on the day. People might actually come and vote on the day. In fact, I think that people are all over the shop and not really solid, because I don't think that the politicians are solid, and I think that the ground that we stand on is not solid. So I think if we look at this kind of topsy-turvy reality of where we sit, I feel like we've been trying to build a house on not good foundations. And I think what's underneath it has been this slow kind of devastation that comes from this lack of trust that we have and our desire not to be accountable for the outcomes. We'd rather, as I said, blame someone else rather than take responsibility for where we sit. So I don't know. I think it's a really tricky conversation, and I think we are affected by what's going on globally. And I think what we're fed on TV, on social media, between each other, I think the conversations are very hard just for this moment. I don't know. Are there more working class Australians than there are middle class professionals? And if there are, who does each of them actually vote for and why? I don't know. Are we deep down a nation of kids who just want to be pro athletes? Could we learn more from Eastern cultures around what it is that we want to achieve and the education that we want to offer ourselves, and for what reason? Do we have agency? I don't know. I guess we've got to back ourselves in all of this, and I wonder if we need to move more away from this aspirational way of being, that sounds like I'm saying we should give up on our dreams. That's not what I mean. I think what I mean is, I think the reason we're the lucky country, we were the lucky country, or we were known as the lucky country, is that we are a melting pot of remarkable humans. And if we look back throughout our histories, all of our histories, the majority of our histories, we're all immigrants at some level, other than First Nations people. And the melting pot of all of who we are is what makes us who we are. We are able to have beautiful food, great, rich cultural experiences, an ability to connect with one another across all of those divides that brings us together. And it gives us the opportunity to be comfortable with who we are within this kind of rich tapestry of an Australian culture, and vote for the way that we want the world to be in a practical way. And that does mean that we need policy. That does mean that we need legislative change. It also means that we have an opportunity to embrace change, even if it's a bit scary. We've got to be willing to open our mind up, our hearts up, and our guts up to new. And we used to be really good at that, but I think we've become very, very scared. So honestly, I know it's unglamorous to have this conversation, and I know I'm not a journalist, and I'm probably not using all the, particularly fabulous vernacular regarding politics. And I certainly know that I'm not Annabelle Crabb, and I'm not Lee Sales, and I'm not a journalist, and I'm not the Batuta advocate, and I'm not the Bulwark, and I'm not any of these particular people that I listen to, but I am a person who feels very strongly that we've got a responsibility as individuals and collectively to keep ourselves informed and to understand what's happening in the world and to be willing to actively listen to other points of view across the generations, and to encourage our kids to educate themselves because they are our next leaders. It's not up to them to undo the stuff that we've done. It's up to us to undo the stuff that we've done and to be clearly responsible for all of that. And I think that the messaging that we are fed, which is from really traditional media, is from everywhere, is that we can't afford this. It'll never happen. What have we done? We've destroyed everything. Everything's collapsing. And we're getting that from all different sort of spaces. And I'm not saying that that's not true to some extent, but gee whiz, don't we have to be a little bit careful what we wish for? Isn't it more important for us to acknowledge how far we've come, look at where we need to do some work? Like, isn't it time for us to give ourselves a bit of a feedback sandwich? Isn't actually that's what an election's about, giving ourselves a feedback sandwich? What I like is this. This is what I've seen. What I'm really impressed with is this. What I'd like to see is more of this, and I think you can work on that. And if you do, this is what I see the outcome being. Isn't that a reasonable way for us to take the three horizons into politics and look at a way for us to move forward in a way that is inclusive, a way that is not influenced by big money, a way that says, no, we actually are happy. We've worked pretty hard for what we've got. And I really like my neighbour, and I love going to the Thai restaurant, and I'm very excited about the fact that we've got a beautiful Vietnamese baker down the road, and I love that I can actually hop on an aeroplane and go to visit all of these countries and learn from these cultures who welcome me as a tourist. Or I'm so excited that I live and work in a multicultural society and that my kids have learned all sorts of different things around spirituality and around, the gift of this tapestry, as I've talked about earlier. I think that money has influence, but it can't buy everything. Money doesn't buy happiness. Money doesn't buy, you can only drive one car at a time, eat one meal at a time, live under one roof at a time. So all that money that's being, duck shoved by Gina, who I'm not a massive fan of, I have to be blunt, and Tony Abbott coming back in to the coalition. I mean, you wouldn't rehire a dickhead in your own business. But anyway, I'm making pretty clear my theories. I think the important thing is that we've actually got to somehow, in the words of Mark Carney, hope is not a strategy. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? How do we, as a group of individuals, come together to make the best of a situation that is actually designed specifically to wake us up? Do we want a Donald Trump in Australia? I'm sure there's people who do. And she is coming in the version with a red hair, like she's, do we really want that? Do we want that? Do we want Nigel Farage? I don't think so. We are such a great group of Australian citizens who work very hard to create our castle, like one of Australia's greatest TV shows. Our home is our castle. And if we tell our kids that they can't afford stuff, then they won't. If we tell our kids that they shouldn't be friends with those kids, then they won't. If we tell our elderly that we don't care about them, then we won't. If we tell people that they cannot live a life that is fulfilling, wonderful, trust their government, trust institutions, look at the things that are good in government, and understand that sometimes people make mistakes and they've got to move through it and we've got to fix it and give it time for that, then be careful what you wish for. We are the maker of our own destinies in this world, and we are accountable for that. So I don't think it's money that's actually going to be buying my vote. And really, what I'm hoping is that having conversations like this makes sense. So what I'd really like to invite you to do is to stay in touch with us at the Water Talks. Talk to us about what it is you're interested in and let us know so that we can discuss it with you, because we're just ordinary people with ideas and trying to work out where we fit in the world and how we can do it together. What we want is a community of people who can have a debate, who do know what it's like. So thank you for listening to me rave on today about what I believe. I don't know if I've actually made it particularly clear, and I think that it's an evolving reality. But I think, like with every relationship and everything that we do, it's not one-dimensional. It is complex. It is hard. There's tons of stats that I can read out to you and bore you to tears. I don't know. The political question and the human one turns out to be the same question, just at two different volumes. Do ordinary people still count? That's it. That's the whole thing underneath all of it. Do we count? Is it important enough for us to actually want to do this? We know what the early warning signs are. Is it worth watching? I think so. Do we want it in our own backyard? I'm not sure. But I think that we've got to make sure that there are reasonable guardrails. We want competitive realities. We want to we really want to encourage independent thinking. We're not a freedom of speech country. We are free to speak. It is not part of our constitution. We are free to speak. We are free to have an opinion. We are free to debate. We are free to have a beer and have a good disagreement with our friends and still walk out of the pub as mates. It's not money. I don't think it's money. I think we've decided it's money. I think we make some decisions around money that give it the power that it doesn't actually have. Anyway, I don't know. I'm going to leave you with it because I'm not sure that I've helped. I'm not sure that I've even got to where we need to go with this. I think it's probably an ever evolving conversation. All I know is that I'm pretty grateful to live here. Most of my life I felt pretty safe in this country, and I've been open to meeting new people. I've been open to learning more about people's cultures, religions, spirituality, beliefs, ways of living. I've been pretty sheltered, and I know that. But it's been a journey. And I welcome you to go on your own journey and really embrace the opportunity to learn more about what's going on in our world so that you too can come up with whatever opinion it will be that drives you, encourages you, helps you to feel motivated and inspired towards a good society, because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We all want a good society. And I think we've got a lot that actually brings us together. I think we've got a lot that we have in common. And I don't think that we need, the bully in the playground telling us what we have to do. I think we can make those decisions ourselves. And I don't think that we need to be as compliant. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to actually have your own opinion. I think it's encouraged to have your own opinion, one that you've formed not because somebody else told you to, or because an algorithm told you to, or because you've been fed this shit on social media, because you are choosing with your own agency what it is that you want to engage in and map out your future, your plans, your life. So I think I'm done raving. And what we'd really love you to do is subscribe to the Water Talks with Pollination Media, and we'd love you to like, subscribe, share. If you think somebody's interested in this, please share it. And again, thank you for coming to the table. I've had my cup of tea and a cough. I appreciate that you've listened to me rave on in the way that I have, and I wish you a good day. Have a brilliant, wonderful rest of your week. See you later.